to please silence cell phones and other electronic devices and remind council that our procedure bylaw prescribes the use of these devices during council meetings. It is 6:31 p.m. I'll call this council meeting to order. And I will please silence cell phones and other electronic devices and remind council that our procedure by. Even I don't find myself quite that delightful to listen to me over and over again. I'll begin with a formal territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the municipality of Brighton is located on the Mississauga and Anishinaabe territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississauga. The municipality of Brighton also acknowledges the Mississauga nations as the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. Oh, I can, yes. We are having some technical difficulties this evening. Our first meeting, we were without a camera, although anybody chiming in could hear us. Now we have a camera that has a solid view of the mustard contraption at the top of this chamber. Those chiming in can see the clerk's department and me and the CAO for sure. And it looks like the heads of the deputy mayor and Councillor Rowley, but the rest of council, I'm sorry to say you're not visible. Oh, Jeff's hand is visible if he puts it up way high, but we will work on fixing the adjustment of the camera for our next meeting, but it's the day of technological interesting things happening. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council approve the June 24th, 2024 council agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Members of council, have you any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. And there are none noted. Are there any announcements this evening? Councillor Butwell.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to say that last Saturday, there was the second annual Pop-Up Pride event in Memorial Park. It was well attended. Thank you for your attendance, and it was nice to see the other councillors there. And it was well attended. There was some great food. There was crafts, lots of kids. There was also some awesome karaoke. So I hope that that builds for next year for the third annual. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I had tremendous time at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference a few weeks ago. There were councillors and mayors from across the country there. A lot of learning, especially for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. A lot of learning about shared challenges from one province to another. A really great time. So thank you for sending me.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Last Thursday afternoon, both the Deputy Mayor and Councillors Ferrettis, Wheeldon, and myself attended the grand opening of the new Brighton Retirement Living Centre, and it was a good afternoon. Well attended by a lot of people in town. Great place, great asset. Glad to see that it's finally off the ground and working.
Thank you. Anyone else? Also, last Saturday, we opened the Rainbow Youth Center officially. I think it has been open for a minute or so, but the official opening was Saturday. Lots of folks came out, lots of representation from the community, including members of council, the OPP, and that was very well attended, very well attended event. And then later last week, or earlier this week, when did we do it? Friday. On Friday, we invited members, our friends from 8 Wing, over to officially show off the 100th anniversary of the RCAF crosswalks that the municipality painted. So thank you to Public Works staff for getting that done. Both the base commander came and the CO from ATES. ATES is the squadron attached to Brighton for ceremonial duties. So they were there with their chief warrant officers as well. Councillor Wheeldon.
Also wanted to point out that Parks and Rec staff have installed a little forest kit on Highway 64 in Harbour. It's looking great. Very excited that that's up.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
And just in case those don't have any plans for next Monday, Canada Day, Councillor Wright and myself sit on the Community Events Committee, and we are ready to go next week. So come and join us for a full day of activities and great fireworks show Monday night.
Looking forward to that. Thank you. Anyone else? Move into the adoption of the minutes with the motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council adopt the June 3rd, 2024 Council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council adopt the June 3rd, 2024 Special Council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that the Council adopt the June 17th, 2024 Council planning meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have no statutory public meeting this evening, which brings us to our delegation. We have one delegation this evening from Sarah BouDiab Nader. It's a presentation regarding the traffic safety concerns along County Road 2 east of No Frills. So I'll get you to come to the podium if you will.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate that you welcomed us so that we would share our concerns with you. It feels like when I was doing my thesis defense for my doctorate.
It won't be that hard.
It won't be that awesome. Thank you so much. Great. So yeah, let's talk about why what triggered all of this. On Friday, May 31st, around 8:50 a.m. My son was crossing towards the school bus. The school bus had come to a full stop, flashers were on, and I was with him, and I was with his sister and his 5-year-old brother. And I looked left and I looked right. We always do that. And then I was like, okay, take your bags, let's go. I hold my 5-year-old son's hand, and we're crossing, and was the first to cross. And I have no idea how that truck just came flashing by. He didn't stop, they didn't stop, kept going, they didn't even stop. Had I not pulled back, by its shirt on that day, I don't know what would have happened. So I'll share in the next slide about where we are and what we're asking for. We reside on County Road 2 and Vickery Road. Vickery is the blue dot that you see on the screen. And it's a very small road, a dead-end road, east of No Frills and west of Bose Road. Bose Road is the gray line that you see right at the corner. We and our neighbors have previously voiced multiple times that the speed limit be extended to continues to be 60 kilometers per hour from that red dot that you see on the screen. This is where it turns into 80 kilometers per hour. So we were asking that if please, it could be just extended until up of Bose Road. It's almost 1.2 kilometers, as you can see from Google Maps. It would not affect the traffic. It would not cause any congestion. It's just 1 minute, but it would save lives. There are almost 4 school bus stops on this stretch. One of them is ours, which is right at the right-hand side of the blue dot. There's one right on Bose Road. There's one right at the red dot, and there's one also across from us. There's also a house right at the end on Bose Road. When she signed the petition, she shared with us also incidents that are happening there, because the road up to Bose Road, County Road 2, it goes uphill. So they really can't see the cars that are coming from that side. And cars are coming really fast. So going out of the driveway is almost impossible. And they have a playground for their kids right on the front yard. And it's very scary for them when cars speed by all the time. We had different incidents I will share as well on the next slide. On this one, I'm just sharing all the signatures that we collected after the incident. almost everyone on this stretch signed sharing that they support that the speed limit remains at 60 kilometers per hour on this stretch. Every time I knocked the door, everyone shared the story. Betty, for example, she's an elderly lady who lives west from us, and she shared that she was walking along County Road 2 to come to collect her mail from Vickery Road, and also she was almost hit by a car. And then Pamela, our neighbor who lives across the street, also shared that when her kids were crossing towards the bus, they also had a similar incident to ours. And we had so many different incidents that our neighbors also have had when leaving Vickery Road to join the traffic. So it is becoming very difficult for us, and we're living this every day. So on the next slide, I'm going to share some few accidents that we have seen recently. There are a lot more on this stretch. We had a rollover between No Frills and Vickery Road. And then we had also seen emergency vehicles gathered on front of Giro Propane is across the street from us. There are really big vehicles that come in and out with propane, and then cars passing, and it's just very risky. And everyone in Giro Propane signed also. The incident right on like the second dot, this also happened to us, so I'm not gonna wait for the third. A car going really fast hit the ditch west of Vickery Road on Henry's property. But because he was speeding, he kept going from the ditch up on Vickery Road and then down into our property on the east side, right on our front yard. And I'm grateful that my kids were not playing outside. On the next slide, I want to share about the mailboxes. The mailboxes are on Vickery Road, and as I mentioned, people walk here all the time. They walk on County Road 2 from their homes to collect their mail from Vickery. And there are elderly people who come here every day, and there are young families, and they walk here every day, and they're putting their lives at risk every single day because cars are speeding by well over 80 kilometers per hour. I believe the truck that almost hit my son was well over 100 kilometers per hour. So you know how traffic is. 40 becomes 50, 60 becomes 80, 80 becomes 100. And then, yeah, unfortunately. So I'm gonna share one last thing before I wrap up. On that day when that incident happened to my son, around bedtime, he hugged me so tight. And he said, "Thank you for saving my life." Why should a child in Brighton tell their mom, "Thank you for saving my life"? And then I lay down at midnight, yes, in my bed, and I thought, what if this happens again? What if this happens to another mom? What if a child actually gets killed? And I'm not allowing this to happen. I don't want anyone to go through this. I'm still traumatized. And I said, I'm gonna do whatever I can to prevent this from happening. I knocked on doors. I collected signatures. I wrote a document. I'm here today. I did every single last drop of effort I can do to prevent this. I trust that you will all do the same. Thank you so much for having me here today. I appreciate you. This is our front yard.
Thank you for sharing the nice picture. And thank you, Dr. BouDiab Nader. We appreciate your coming here today. This is a very good next step. The good first step was having your neighbor call me, and we did, through that effort, get commitment from the Director of Public Works at the county to at least investigate this portion of the roadway. I'll be looking at a motion here in a second that will also help move that forward. I also reached out to the OPP inspector, and they have been increasing enforcement along that stretch of County Road 2 recently. Unfortunately, that can't be an ongoing thing. Obviously, policing resources are stretched as thinly as they are, but I will reach out again and ask for increased enforcement on there. especially in September when the school starts back up. I think
Great.
that's important, but hopefully we can get this something done between now and the beginning of the school year as well. So
Thank you so
thank you very much. Are there any questions any questions from members of council? Thank you very much for your time. Have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council received the presentation from Sarah BouDiab Nader regarding traffic safety concerns along County Road 2 east of No Frills, and refer to staff to follow up with County of Northumberland and the Northumberland OPP Detachment Board. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Good. We have no citizens' comments this evening, which brings us straight into staff reports. First report is with regard to the Presqu Provincial Park Tourism Pilot Program. Ms. Birch, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
I do. I'd first like to apologize. The attachment on your report, there are a few mistakes. I've since corrected these and the correct version will be sent to print. So just wanted to give everyone forewarning about that. I'd also like to thank Rob Cunningham and Haley Gurley, who are the superintendent and assistant superintendent of Presqu Provincial Park. Both Rob and Haley have been really incredible at giving us background information on how best to promote Brighton to visitors in Presqu. And from a tourism perspective, I think this is a really valuable and a partnership that holds a lot of possibility. So Ben and I are looking forward to working with them not only this summer, but also on future projects. I'd also like to thank the facilities department, Kevin Post and Austin Mackey. They were the ones who installed and built the signage post that you see there. They were great to work with. And I think overall, this pilot project represents a really cool opportunity and an opportunity to reach an untapped audience. And hopefully we're able to present these awesome tourism assets we have in Brighton to a wider audience. This is our first kind of official weekend that we'll have everything up and running. We have had a few things out at the locations throughout the park for the last 2 weeks, and through traceable QR codes and conversations with staff as we've been restocking, it's estimated we've reached over 100 visitors who have taken part and gotten information from these different kiosks.
Thank you, Ms. Birch. Motion is moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receives this report for information outlining the tourism promotion pilot project happening in Presqu Provincial Park this summer. Is there any discussion? Councillor Botwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Ms. Birch. I can't quite see you over there. You both went that way. So I read through, I think it's a really, again, another really cool idea that's come out of your department, Mr. Hagerman as well. Congratulations. I think there are some really neat ideas that are coming out. So this was, so when I read through the report, I don't really have any questions. I understand what's happening. This started at the beginning of the calendar year. Is that how I understand it?
Ms. Birch.
Sorry, through the mayor to Councillor Butwell, we initially started the conversations around what this might look like in January. The actual rollout, the first kind of trial 2 weekends only started like the second week of June.
Okay. Follow up?
Go ahead.
So this was not specifically budgeted for in the 2024 budget, correct?
Ms. Birch.
Through the mayor to Councillor Butwell, it was through funds that we allocate for tourism promotion, but the project specifically wasn't, it hadn't come to fruition yet.
It had kind of emerged.
Yes.
So if it was, if the funds to roll this out were kind of taken from the budget, the overall budget, what are the programs that were budgeted for that will not be happening? Or was this extra money that was just budgeted as like a padding?
Ms. Birch.
Through the mayor to Councillor Butwell. I do believe that this was just extra padding. We've kind of kept this very bare bones for the first year, just to kind of figure out if there's an appetite for this, with the possibility of if this grows bigger and moves forward, we would move forward and put budgeted dollars specifically towards this project in the future.
So if you had to put a figure, and again, follow up, Ms. Birch, if you had to put a figure on how many staff hours, because that's a cost, and what resources, what would be the cost if you were estimating that? So how much of that money that was taken from the budget was extra money that's gone towards this project?
I just want to back it up a little bit. We don't ever have extra money in the
Oh.
budget.
It had to come from somewhere, so that's why I was
The-
asking what are we not
Well, it
gonna
was
do?
explained that it comes from a tourism line item and that this program was created after we budgeted for tourism. But are you able to answer how many staff hours and or the cost for this program?
Through the mayor to Councillor Butwell, I believe, and maybe Danny can help me, Kevin and Austin work for Danny, so for me, I think it was about 8 hours in total, and all of the tourism promotion that actually goes in it, we get for free.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, I do think it's a great idea.
Thank you both. Anything further from members of council? Go ahead, Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. It's just nice to see kind of some initiation again with Presqu Park, and I should say our community events has had some conversations with them as well, where they're going to participate this year at Canada Day. So it's nice to see the beginning of a partnership that we've kind of missed out on for a while.
I think we've wrung our hands for a long time about how do we get those 100,000 or so unique visitors to engage in local commerce. And I think this is a really good next step in that adventure. We've done a lot of different initiatives, some with some extremely questionable success. So hopefully we see some boots on the ground with this one. Thank you very much. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is with regard to the Municipal Accommodations Tax Project. Manager Hagerman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
You have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis. The council receive the report for information as it pertains to the development and implementation of a municipal accommodation tax collection while working with Granicus, a software firm that specializes in digital civic engagement for government organizations. Questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair, thank you to Mr. Hagerman. Excellent report. Thank you so much. It clearly indicates that we have all the modules, which I was keen on. And it also outlines the challenges that you've been putting up with to get this implemented, from delays from MPAC and Granicus not having the human resources to staff it out properly. So you've managed to tough it out and get through that. I was also tickled pink to see that we're now implementing MAT tax collection on a quarterly basis. And here, congratulations. Suggestion perhaps, our current bylaw talks about 6 months, and I think that's tripped us up in another area once before, having an outdated bylaw. So we might want to consider updating that bylaw really quickly so that we don't have that obstacle in terms of collection, because I think your target is early August. So that would be good. In reading through the numbers and going back to the March 18 report from bylaw, it indicated that it identified 14 STAs, 61 enforcement letters had been sent out, and 5 penalty notices. And so my quick calculation tells me that there's something in the order of 70 plus STA operations that we're aware of. Is that number kind of accurate?
Yes, through the mayor to the Councillor Fredis, and the rest of the council. I'll just back up for 1 second. I guess you and I have had constructive conversation on the 6-month or quarterly remittance plan. my outlook originally was, probably not a lot of collection going on in Brighton, so every 6 months is probably suitable amidst our constructive discussion. Over the course of working with Granicus, it became clear that quarterly was a little bit better on their end. So the decision was made when we were building the modules to go that way. So I agree, we need to amend the bylaw for sure. So we'll be working with Candace and the team on that. We currently, as of today, there was so one of the things that Granicus did really, really quickly was provide us with the Granicus host compliance dashboard. So that tells us what's going on with all of the STAs in Brighton on a day-to-day basis through their bots that they pick up on all of the vacation rental sites in North America. So as of today, there was 64 online. As of today. That's, I actually have the tab open on my computer right now. There's still 64. So that could change by Friday afternoon or Thursday afternoon to 75 quite easily. As of today, we had 41 STA permits assigned. And that's basically been working away at that for about 16 months. And of those 41, 10 of them have renewed their license and a year's elapsed. So we've collected revenue for about 51 permits in the last, call it 16 months.
Thank you both. Anything further from members of council? Councilor Rowley,
Oh, if Councillor Freitas has a follow-up, I can
is it a
wait.
follow-up?
Yes.
Please do.
Thank you to the chair and to Mr. Hagerman. Hopefully you have a quick answer to this one, but recently I was at the Timber House and they were proudly talking about their 10 hotel rooms / bed and breakfast operation. And they use the terms interchangeably. And the minute they use the terminology, the little light went off in my head and said, oh, I got to tell Ben, Mat tax. Is that something that's able to be captured by this Granicus solution, including I guess the Presqu motel as well? Would you incorporate that and capture that in this Mat tax solution?
Thank you. And before you answer that question, we're not going to speak specifically about any businesses in the community. So
Okay.
keep your statement general, please.
For sure. Through the mayor to Council Freitas, and the rest of council, all vacation rental units have been captured. We know about them all. As for private hotels and franchise hotels or motels, those partnerships and communications go right from the municipality to the firm. So Granicus wouldn't be supporting us when we're collecting MAT from a hotel or motel. I came from a municipality that had just started collecting MAT, and they were working directly with the hotel operators to collect on a quarterly schedule. Granicus is for all our vacation STA rental spots.
Thank you both. Councilor Rowley.
Councillor Freitas stole my question.
Guess you shouldn't have let him have his follow-up. Anything further from members of council? CAO, do we require direction to staff to update that bylaw, or is that happening in the background? Thank you. All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is with regard to branding costing analysis. Manager Hagerman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
A motion moved by Councilor Wright, seconded by Councilor Wheeldon, that council receive the branding cost analysis for information and provide further direction to staff on working toward a new brand logo for the municipality of Brighton. Members of council? Councillor Wielden?
Thank you. Through you. Thank you for doing this. Really appreciate seeing this fleshed out a little bit more and excited for it to move forward. Just so I understand, the costs that you've discussed in here are costs that we would mostly incur anyway, just as things need to be replaced. Is that correct?
Manager Hagerman?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Wield and the rest of council, just like I've kind of tried to lay out here, there's a few costs that will be relevant because we have a new logo, and there's several costs that it doesn't matter what our logo is, new, old, we probably should put some time and attention into revamping anyway, if that makes sense.
Anything further from members of council? Councillor Butwell?
Thank you, through you to Mr. Hagerman. So we have some capital costs, which are entrance exit, wayfaring signage at 60,000 and the website refresh at 55, which are both of those 2023 estimates?
Mr. Hagerman?
Through the mayor to Councillor Butwell, the rest of the council. The website is as recent as 2023. A new firm has purchased our provider, or our, I guess, e-solutions, a new firm called GovStack. And we've had some very preliminary chats with them. To get all the bells and whistles, you're probably looking at, it might be conservative at 55, but it's something in that neighborhood for sure. The entrance exit signs, I've been given no firm quote on that from a supplier or sign maker or anything. That's just from canvassing some neighboring municipalities that I know have done some signage work kind of in the last decade or so.
So we're looking at about $115,000 just in those costs in that one section, which if we were looking at our budget from this year, I believe 115 is approximately a 1% increase in property taxes. If perhaps Director Whitfield could just kind of, I see nodding. And they don't have a mic, so.
That's correct. You're approximately 1%.
Unless this is taken from some other, from reserves, I don't know what our, and the reason I'm asking the question is because I know that we are now contemplating a really large overhaul of our wastewater system. We've got several big projects and large expenditures, and I just worry about an additional percent of property tax being levied for the purposes of a rebrand.
I think it's a fair comment, keeping in mind that property taxes will not be involved in the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. Those will be user fee based.
User fee based. Several projects, purchases.
There's
a lot
you're
of
right.
stuff.
There's
that
lots
we've
going
commit-
on.
There's a lot that
Absolutely.
we've committed to, and I saw that number and it translated to 1%. And I wonder what the appetite might be. And that's something maybe we'll get some feedback along the way.
Mr. Hagerman, can you speak to where the money's coming from? Is it budgeted for? Where is it in the budget, et cetera, et cetera?
Through the mayor, just some clarification, like, this would be for a future budget line for sure, whether it be through Public Works, or IT, whatever the relevant,
So
project.
after a branding exercise and after whomever comes up with a new logo and it's endorsed by council, then we would budget for the new things to be branded in the new way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, through the mayor to the rest of the council. What I've tried to lay out here is that whether we get a new logo or we would continue with our current logo, these are some of the things we probably got to talk about anyway in the next few years, whether it's 2025, 26, 30, I don't know. But our entrance signs are looking tired, our website's looking tired. That's why they're part of the report. They're not a today thing, that's for sure.
understood. Thank you very much. Councillor Rowley?
Just a
Oh, you have a follow-up?
just a very quick one.
Please do.
You mentioned something that is planned on being done as just a general refresh. I know with the Parks and Rec Department, when their equipment, they have them on a 5-year schedule for certain equipment, 10-year. Has there been a previous rolling plan within our departments to address the refreshing, even without any brand changes, refreshing of our signs as they wear down? Is that something that anyone can speak to?
Mr. Hagerman?
Through the mayor to Councillor Butwell, there's definitely those conversations that come across my desk frequently. We're taking down signs at times because they've been outdated. And I guess my outlook on it, basically kind of post major COVID regulations, has been, well, let's just hold on a minute here and wait and see, because there's been chatter about a logo refresh someday. So why would we, if we're going to get a new logo refresh someday, why would we put the old branding on our wayfinding signage? So that's kind of been the thought process in the last few years.
Thank you both. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. To Mr. Hagerman. So if I understand this, you see this as a multi-year probably project to get this done. I was looking back several years, I believe about 10 years ago, the municipality went through a branding / marketing exercise, and it had significant costs, probably more than the dollars that are listed here already today. So I guess I'll just wait to see how this is all going to roll out, and certainly would be something that we need to budget over more than 1 year for sure. Thank you.
Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair, as Councillor Butwell pointed out, there are some significant costs facing us, but they're not covered by tax dollars. It's the user fees or consumption fees attached to water and wastewater. Hopefully the Premier and the ministers in Queen's Park will help us out, but I guess we shouldn't count on that. Overall, I'm in favor of a brand refresh, and the motion here, or the recommendation from council or from staff, is we provide further direction. I guess the direction I would like to offer is that we retain a professional to do a logo design for consideration. Whether we are able to accomplish it in this budget or it needs to be in the new budget, I guess remains to be seen. But I think we all concur that the last design really wasn't all that appealing, and it might be best if we retained a professional to put something rather contemporary together for us, and then move off into these other initiatives that you've identified. That would be my recommendation or suggestion relative to further direction that's requested.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. This question might actually be for Director Whitfield. We've just passed an IT master plan. Does that not include a website update? So this is money that we're going to be spending anyway, according to the IT master plan?
Director.
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Wheeldon, we do have that in our IT master plan. And we are doing some work right now in bringing an update to that plan to council. And we do have to really consider, because of the change in the e-solutions and GovStack, we do have to consider that sooner than later, because the system that we're using right now is getting antiquated, even though it's only about 7 years old. So it's starting to get tired, and we will have to look at that refresh sooner than later.
Please do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm glad I remembered that correctly. I also do want to say that I believe that the graphic designer who's working on this is a professional, but that first draft is never expected to be a last draft. So I quite liked many elements of the last one that we saw, and it was made very clear to us it was just a starting point. And so I'm excited to see that design worked with and made a little better. But ultimately, we'll leave those decisions up to the experts and the public. The last thing that we had asked for was, or that we had been asked for before costing, was direction on public consultation. And so if there's any further direction, I think we should go back to proposing public consultation.
Anything further from members of council? Councillor Butwell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just going to what Councillor Rowley had mentioned, you had said that the last time there was a rebrand, the numbers seemed to be more than this. Is that what I understood?
Yeah, Councillor Rowley, yes.
May I answer?
Yeah, you may have a recollection of the numbers better than.
Well, I dug it out.
Oh, there we go.
So 2014, it was a branding marketing exercise. It was over 140,000.
With the result being a ripoff from Brighton, England,
I
FYI.
heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
that-
And that was not endorsed by council.
Oh.
So a lot of money, no endorsement.
So this project seems to be similar in price. It seems like when I start adding the 8 to 10,000, is there potentially, perhaps to Mr. Hagerman, there's potentially a good amount more money, I'm thinking perhaps. I don't want to suggest that your numbers are incorrect in the least, but there may be other areas that are not being contemplated in this for branding rollout, seeing that the numbers from 10 years ago were in excess of the ones in this report.
I would suggest that the exercise from 10 years ago was a good deal more involved. I'm not sure it provided the results that council was looking for, but there was a lot of heavy hitters around the table. There were a lot of expensive consultants around the table.
Okay.
Can I say it that way? Trying to be polite, but it was a very expensive process.
Okay.
It did not net the results that the council of the day was looking for. The consultation process was, I think, a failed effort at the end of the day.
I raise it because there's there's a line just at the end of the analysis comment section on page 2 of the report that says staff would be sure to report back on the final cost of implementation once the majority of the brand rollout was completed. That seems to just leave it open to a lot of money continuing to be spent and us only finding out after the fact.
I think most of this, and I'll ask Mr. Hagerman to confirm, but I think most of this is costings of placing whatever the new brand looks like on trucks and signs, et cetera, which is what we'd be doing anyway as we buy a new truck or as we refresh signs in the community. So I don't think there's a lot of additional money for specific to branding that we're talking about here. But there is a branding exercise that needs to take place, and that might be where we need to have a conversation. But Mr. Hagerman, I'll look for your input here.
Through the mayor to Councillor Butwell. I guess, Paul, apologies for not being a little more clear, but where my mind was when I wrote that line was $8,000 to $10,000 was too broad. So what I was thinking was once, new vehicle details, replacement of some road signage facilities, creation of the file, website, social media, business cards, miscellaneous documents. The intent when I wrote that was to say, oh, it cost us $9,600, $8,600 was to bring that number back. I wasn't thinking to myself or trying to mislead council in any way, thinking that it would be $35,000, $25,000, something like that to do this type of work. That was the intent there.
Just a
Go
quick
ahead.
follow-up, and my apologies if it came off that way. I did not intend it. If you were trying to rip us off, then you would put it in writing. That just doesn't go. So I suppose I'm just a little bit gun shy because we've had some things happen recently where we're finding out after the fact, and I'm just examining a little bit more deeply. So is there an actual cost associated with strictly the design, just getting us to the point where we are ready to now start printing and smacking it on everything else? Is there that itemized cost?
Specific to the branding
The
exercise.
branding exercise, not the cost to put it, like, so accepting that if we have a new logo, the creation of that and those files is one cost. And then the rollout of slapping it everywhere is an entirely separate cost. Do we have costing just on that piece?
Mr. Hagerman?
Through the mayor to Councillor Butwell, so what I've tried to lay out here is if we were to utilize the, our current partners, and continue forward with, their expertise, the only cost would be in staff time, the file, and then trademarking. To create the logo, to create the brand, to create the color palette, to create the brand guide, all of that stuff. If we decide to go into, to Councillor Fredis's question or comment earlier on, there's no budgeted dollars in the 2024 budget. We have no money to go hire a brand consultant. But if it's something we want to do in 2025 and council so chooses to pass that, it's going to cost us $25,000. I have a $21,000 estimate, I believe, in the report that's done from a municipality in 2021, about the same size as Brighton, that used a more of a boutique designer, did a really good job. So we'd be looking at $20K, create the logo, create the brand, create the color palette, probably some advisory and some consulting costs in helping us get it trademarked, all of that stuff. So you're paying for probably some really good work being done, but also some more like advisory on legal and trademarking and that kind of thing. I think if we put this out for tender, there'd be no shortage of brand consultants after our business, and we'd be pretty competitive. We could probably find a pretty good rate, but that's another question for, that's another, that's something to come if council so chooses to budget for that expenditure someday.
Before I go to you, Councillor Fredis, I have scrolled something down that I think we may want to add something like this to the motion. And it would read something like, and further direct staff to begin a public branding process and provide a report to council at the regular council meeting of August on how we roll that out. So I imagine the answer to that would be, we have to get into the 2025 budget, but at least we start wrapping our heads around a timeline and a light at the end of the tunnel for this whole discussion. But maybe that's not where council wants to go. Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. I know Mr. Hagerman in his last report outlined a fairly comprehensive public consultation strategy, which I thought was fine as long as the residents get some input. I have to disagree with Councillor Wilden, and I think the majority of my council colleagues will agree with me. The last design we saw just didn't make it. It was too busy. It wasn't reproducible. It didn't scale well. I think we need to go a different direction. And I think the last time around, they spent about $30,000 or something for a brand, even though it was a clone of somebody. But I think we need to reach out to a professional, get that trademarking advice and all that stuff that comes with it. In my mind, I'm thinking the number is probably somewhere between 30 and 40, but it's probably money well worth spending, but it should be budgeted for 2025. For what it's worth, I've taken the other ancillary costs that you've summarized and kind of laid them down here and did some calculation. And my calculation is from start to finish, from hiring a pro designer and then a full rollout and implementation, we're somewhere between 185 and 200,000. But a big chunk of that will be a phase in over time, obviously. So I think we need to start fresh. With the new design place, it should be part of the 2025 budget and then progress from there.
Thank you for that. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Wright.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Fredis, does that number include the fact that the 60,000 for the signage and the 55,000 for the website refresh are already costs that we're going to be incurring regardless of a rebranding? Yeah. Okay, that's all in there. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Butwell.
Thank you through you to Mr. Hagerman. Do you or Ms. Birch have some skills that could be applied to this project where we start from with, like, truly from within, instead of, like, I know that this logo, this previous logo, that the previous iteration seems to have kind of come from the Bay of Quinte, someone who worked in design there. I know it can be a complicated thing to do, but I also know that the two of you, with working in the municipality and understanding the municipality, maybe at least be able to come up with like your own draft as a jumping off point. Is that something that you feel is within your department's skill set, where we can start from within, and maybe then when we get to a certain point, draw in from outside expertise?
Mr. Hagerman?
Through the mayor to Councillor Boutwell, is there skills at this table that I'm sitting at? Yes. Are those skills mine? I don't know. You can guess. Do we have the time resources to dump into creating a logo from scratch when there's not enough time to begin with? No. So it's a yes, no question. We have the skills. Could we create a logo in-house? Probably. It just wouldn't, it's not something we can do with the amount of things we got up in the air right now. As terrible as, I know it's not a great thing to say, but we're always busy, but we truly don't have the time to create a new logo. No.
Okay, I just thought that if we had talent, then it would be a nice way to roll that talent into something that's part of the municipality, right? Use our own. If not, then I will trust you on that.
Fair question and fair answer. Thank you. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. I don't want to continue circling back to it. So my last comment on the design that was proposed is that it was simply a draft. It was one concept. Every other thing I've seen from Bay of Quinte marketing has been phenomenal graphic design. All of their books are beautiful to look at. All of their branding is gorgeous. Clearly they have the skills within their team. One design being a flop, I don't even think it was a flop. There were issues certainly, but that's not necessarily an indication to me that we need to start a much more expensive process with someone else when they clearly have a lot of good work that that we admire. I mean, we've lauded them at this table already for their work in the past. So it seems a bit much to me to be adding to a budget once we finally figured out how small the budget for this could be. Now we're starting to say, let's add on to the budget for the sake of one design.
Councillor Fredis.
Thank you, Sid Chair. I guess to Councillor Boutwell, we clearly have very talented people in the Economic Development Department, but I think their time is better spent driving tourism and collecting MAT tax dollars and good stuff like that. That's a better use of their valuable time and talents. Councillor Wheeldon, I don't disagree that the Bay of Quinte Marketing does some pretty good work in publishing brochures. But having been raised by a commercial artist, now called graphic designer, I can tell you there is a clear distinction between producing a marketing piece and creating a logo. They are vastly different talents and skill sets. And that last design, with all due respect, just did not make it. It violated all the fundamental rules of good logo design. And I just want the best for Brighton. And to me, it's not outrageous to spend a few dollars to hire a pro who does logo work that gives us something unique and distinctive and contemporary that can carry us for the next 20 years.
Our comment on both sides, I think. Thank you very much. Do we want to add anything to this motion? I made a suggestion. Is that my suggestion is to write and further direct staff to begin a public branding process and provide a report to council at the regular council meeting of August. You think that covers it? Councillor Browley?
Do you think we need to punt anything into the budget as well for 2025?
I would anticipate that
that
staff
comes in
would want to
August.
make that recommendation in August.
Okay, because they'll be starting budget by then, correct?
CAO, you got a comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't.
Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Hagerman. Do you feel like you can provide something additional to what is here tonight in August, or do we want to seek further direction specifically? I don't know what the Bay of Quinte capacity there, our partners that had drafted this logo, if there is any potential to go back and bring anything prior to budget before council makes that decision. I'm just worried that there's an expectation in August, and I'm not sure we have a lot more to offer other than what's been put on the table already. And I'm a little unsure of the direction, whether or not we're taking what we have, whether or not we're looking towards a consultant.
Sure, I don't even know who this is through now.
Mr. Hagerman, always through me, sir. Always
Okay.
through me.
Through the mayor to my wonderful boss. We.
I will adjourn this meeting.
I was like, where was I here? No, there's not a lot more to really bring short of a sample brand that I can bring from like a different municipality to show you kind of what a branding consultant would offer. I would say that's about the only thing I haven't covered, is to show exactly what a branding consultant does and compare it with maybe giving Bay of Quinte another run at it.
So at this stage, the question we need to answer for you is, go ahead, Chief. Is continue down the road with Bay of Quinte or go to a consultant for assistance with the branding process? Or pull it all off the table and start again, or don't start again.
Yeah, I through the mayor, I think that direction on, is this something to bring back for budget 2025? If council / staff choose to go the Bay of Quinte route and we don't need to spend the 25K on a branding consultant, maybe those funds go into reserves to help pay for results of the branding. I don't know what, and or something to that token. I don't know if council needs to see the two examples. That maybe be the only thing I could maybe offer. And I don't know how appropriate it is to just offer one firm's work before you hire them either. So
that would violate our purchasing
Right.
policy. So we wouldn't go down that road.
that's not an option. I guess I'm just looking for either continuing with Bay of Quinte or bringing it to 2025 budget. Basically the two options.
See how?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, perhaps if council is still uncertain about those two options, we could bring something back that indicates what a branding consultant can do versus what the Bay of Quinte can do and what that estimated cost would be. And then council could make a decision if there's still some uncertainty about what the branding consultant can even offer. We can look at some other municipalities, take a look at those that have used one, get some examples and bring that back. We also can speak to the Bay of Quinte and see what else they might be able to provide to you and just bring that back so that council can make further direction at that time.
And when could that happen if that was council's choice?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Hagerman, is August reasonable? Or maybe September when budget really gets kicked off?
Through the mayor to the CAO. Yeah, August, we could make that happen.
So that would just be then a referral back to staff. We would refer the report back to staff and staff would bring another report back with that information that you've suggested there.
I am okay with that if the rest of council, if you feel you need information, if you don't feel that you need additional information at this time, we don't need to bring back another report. I'm just trying to get some clarity from council on where you'd like to go with this. And I'm just not sure we're there tonight.
So I think there's three options. We direct staff to continue the process through the Bay of Quinte Regional Marketing Board. We refer the matter to budget, which would tell staff we want to hire a branding consultant to move down the road, or we refer the matter to staff and they would bring back a report to show us what happens if we continue with Bay of Quinte, what happens if we go down the branding consultant road. So council, what would you like to do? Councilor Fredis.
I think you can take option one off the table. Option three seems too redundant. I really guess it comes down to option two. We'd like to go with an external specialist in logo design. And I guess that means putting it in the 2025 budget.
Councilor Wheeldon.
And I would suggest the exact opposite, that I quite like option 1 and option 3 seems quite reasonable so that we can see a side-by-side comparison.
Next, Councillor Butwell.
And y'all are both wrong. Um, Sorry, had to. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I actually think that there's some value in seeing what the two different directions can offer us, how they would work through that process. And it seems to take us into a timeline that would put us into the 2025 budget anyways. So I like the idea of having the choice without fully understanding. I am familiar somewhat with Bay of Quinte marketing. They're marketing for, it's a tourism, it's a business thing, which I can appreciate is totally different than the graphic design behind logo, from concept to ultimate creation. So I think I like that option where we get some more information and then refer this to budget, because I think it deserves more money than just trying to shave pennies off all the time. If it is how we want to step into the next couple of decades as a municipality, I think it deserves more time.
Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. I kind of agree with Councillor Butwell also. Not only that, there's no rush to get that done this week, right? So let's take our time, and if we're going to do this, and if we're going to put money, regardless of what we put on it, that we take our time and that we do it right. And if we have lots of options, I would much prefer to have many options to look at and pick the right one and do it the right way than as what we did 10 years ago, or I didn't do it 10 years ago. But anyway, let's do it right, and let's have something productive in a few months.
Anyone else? Councillor Wright.
I would agree with Councillor Butwell as well. I like the idea of having some hard choices in front of us to see what can be done. And that way we know what we're looking at. We will have a better idea of the cost going forward. And then when it hits a budget line, then it becomes whether or not we include it or not. So I think that's the wiser idea.
So go ahead, Councillor Fredis.
So I'm going to defer to Councillors Butwell, Rowley, and Wright, and concur with them. I'll take a harder line when we see the alternatives.
Well, it's nice to know there'll be a hard line somewhere, Councillor Fredis. Thank you. So if we add and refer the matter to staff to provide a report detailing the value of the two options, we'll just say of the two options. Is that fair, members of council? So Councillor Wright is the mover. Are you okay with that? Councillor Wheeldon is the seconder. So I've added and further refer the matter to staff to provide a report detailing the two options. Is there any further discussion? CIO, I did not put a date on that, understanding that there's a quasi commitment for August, but we won't hold anybody to anything given that we're likely to be having this conversation in budget anyway. Anything further? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. It's 7:34. Councillor Rowley has left the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Hagerman. That was a good report. Good discussion. The next staff report is with regard to signage street name change Drury Street. Director Whiteman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
No, I do not.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell. The council directs staff to maintain the current signage for Drury Street in Smithfield and include a secondary sign to acknowledge the historical significance of the Drury spelling as requested by the Heritage Committee. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
I just want to say, I think this is great because it actually draws more attention to the historical significance than just changing it back would have been.
Indeed true. Thank you for that. Anything further? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. brings us to the staff report, relocation of the Hops Kiln Barn through the issuance of a building permit. Director Whiteman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council receive the staff report dated June 24th, 2024, regarding the relocation of the Hops Kiln Barn, and further that council approves the relocation of the Hops Kiln Barn as per the site plan attached. Is there any discussion? Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair, thank you to Director Whiteman. Director, last week at the Rural Advisory Committee meeting, there was some discussion about this. And some of the folks on Rural Advisory were a little upset or opposed to the relocation of the Hops Barn to Codrington. I'm not quite certain I understand why. But there were two other suggestions that were brought forward. One was relocation to Hilton Hall, and the other was the possibility of relocation to the Proctor House site. Now, subsequently, you and I had a bit of a chat about Hilton Hall, and you had pointed out that there were some concerns about Hilton Hall. Could you share that with us?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Feratis. We found out that we have some septic issues at Hilton Hall, where we have to come up with a new bed, actually. So there will be very little space to put the Hops Kiln Barn there. So it's limited. I don't think that I can answer any other way. Very limited at this point.
Anything further? Go ahead.
Well, if I follow up, if I may, the chair. The idea of relocating it to the Proctor House was kind of intriguing to me when I first heard about it. Someone pointed out it would be like Brighton creating its own version of Black Creek Pioneer Village, but with a Brighton twist to it. I thought that was rather intriguing. But I suspect that there could be some issues relative to doing that, such as getting LTC approval and then all the other planning and permitting that would be required. Not to mention perhaps the Brian Todd Community Fund and their volunteers might not be available to do this. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Feratis. Yes. We, from what I gather from Mr. Davis, from the Todd Memorial Fund, is that they have tried to secure service providers in the area, and they have limited time, and they've tried to dedicate themselves to providing service and to relocate the barn. So it would be a challenge at this point in time. And I think, if I understand correctly, and I don't want to misspeak, and maybe somebody could correct me, but pre-COVID, I think there was some suggestion that Codrington, I don't know if it was the community center, but Codrington itself would be the location that was considered.
That is correct, and I believe it was taken to the Codrington Community Association of the day, and we received endorsement from them. I would also remind everyone that Proctor House sits on Lower Trent Conservation Authority lands. It is not municipally held property. They do hold a lease, a long-term lease, but we would then have to go through those. I love the idea of a settlers village or a pioneer village, and I love what Lang is doing with the local Indigenous community, inviting that group in to provide that level of education as well from a settler village perspective. But I unfortunately, I don't think it's feasible for Brighton to do that. Councillor Feratis.
Through the chair. Yeah, I suspected as much myself. I was intrigued by the concept, but I was aware of LTC's involvement and knew that very well could cause a lengthy delay or maybe even scuttle the project entirely. I'm like you, I thought it was intriguing. And the other thing is, I've learned as well recently in some chats that from a former member of the board of the Codrington Community Association, that pre-COVID, their board did agree with locating the barn in Codrington. So although there may be some in the community that are adverse and are providing a little bit of pushback, I think that endorsement was clearly there from the CCA.
Recognizing that's now probably 4 years hence or more, but we do have an endorsement from that board. Councillor Botwell.
Thank you through you. So you don't know what the pushback was? Like, do you know what their concern is now?
Councillor Fredis.
To the chair, thank you. Some of the issues that were raised, is it going to have power? What about bathrooms? What would it be used for? Are kind of red herrings, in my opinion. First off, from the report, and Mr. Davis made perfectly clear, it will have electricity. So we could heat it or cool it if we need it. Will it have bathrooms? Well, plumbing to it is probably difficult, but who would use it? I envision the market using it, for example. And when the market is operating, some of the vendors participate financially so that the washrooms in the community hall itself are accessible and available. So it's kind of a logical fit to me. And some of those issues that were raised, as I said, as tactfully as I can, are a bit of red herrings. I don't think that was the real motivation. So this makes perfect sense to me. And again, because their board obviously saw the merit in it previously, I don't know why would we run counter to that. And I understand from my sources in running the market that there are applications for it, if it can be heated or cooled. The other suggestion was perhaps even a museum for historical farm implements from the community. So there's lots of creative ideas for those with a positive bent.
Thank you both. Any further questions or comments from members of council? All those in, go ahead, Councillor Rowley.
I do have a question, and certainly not to, I'm certainly in full support of this. The proposed location, as to where it's going, marked on here, parking is already an issue, on market days and at the other event days. Are we putting it in a place where this could affect parking in access at some point? Does it have to go right there? Is there a reason exactly? Or was parking and access taken into consideration when you looked into this?
Director Whiteman.
Yes, I don't think we have nailed it down in terms of where it is it's going to go. It's not a very big building, doesn't take up a lot of space. So I think we have room to play between, in terms of the section, the option B that has been proposed.
Thank you both. But was parking taken into consideration? That was the other part of that question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it was.
And where the proposed B location is on this map, I believe there is some ancillary parking used currently in that location. So as long as there was access to the area in behind for overflow parking, I think it would be okay, but what do I know?
To answer you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it's as I say, it's not fixed in terms of where it is at that time. I think we have room to play with it.
So I think it's fair to say that if council were to endorse this tonight, that we would anticipate staff would continue those discussions with, in particular, people at the market, where the parking is because of the market, and it's a good thing, because of the market, parking becomes a premium. And that's a good thing.
Yes, no, we will have to have further discussions with them.
Thank you. Councillor Wright?
Just wondering, through you, Mr. Mayor, if a site behind the shelter itself, if it were to run parallel but behind, or is visibility from the road an issue? Because then if there's ancillary parking that's already occurring where the proposed location at B is, if that needs to be taken over and more pavement put down for parking, then the barn's still out of the way, but still accessible for the shelter and the market on Sundays.
Director?
For you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wright. It's a possibility. I think it does hide it. I don't know how to answer. I just feel that that's probably the best location, but I'm open to ideas.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Follow-up comment, sorry, just also thinking too that for running electricity, and then if there was any future plumbing down the road that we wanted to add to it, it's closer to Codrington Hall and the shelter to maybe facilitate those things where it's a little bit further away from them right now. So it might bring costs down for bringing those things to the building.
Director?
For you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wright. Yes, that's all also has to be considered. Yeah.
So I'll remind council that the motion reads, the council approves the relocation of the Hops Kiln Barn as per the site plan attached, just FYI. Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair, thank you. In looking at the sketch, I kind of like Councillor Wright's suggestion of placing it in behind the shelter, not necessarily behind the hall, but behind the shelter. But perhaps staff should be talking to the CCA and the market to see if locating it there works for them in terms of their market layout and vendors and that sort of thing. And then it would take it out of the B location to allow for parking expansion and a place to put all the Quinte Transit buses we want to run up there with people.
CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to council. I didn't have a lot of involvement when this was provided to staff to prepare the site plan, although I know that they did take into consideration where the location was most feasible. There was a discussion specifically around hydro and that location was a better spot for it with the access that they had. I don't anticipate that this building will have plumbing, so I'm not concerned about that. Just looking at it, there could be some concerns with proximity to the shelter and the buildings being that close together. And once we start to move it close to the septic as well as close to the well and then up to the diamond. So I'm going to assume that the staff have looked at all of the options and placed this as the best option. Although if council does want us to go back, we certainly can do that. And of course, delaying the actual move, which I know some are anxious to see it happen. So if that is the direction of council, my suggestion would be that staff could investigate if that is an option and report back if it is not an option, that this is to go forwards, that we're not delayed and bringing it back to council for an additional report.
Councillor Botwell.
Thank you, and through you. I quite like the location of where it's been placed. It's going to be something highly visible to the traffic coming back and forth. And what's the point of conserving and saving something if we're going to tuck it in behind something else? And that I know that that's where the hydro comes in, because I've had a meeting up there previously with hydro. So I also would assume that our staff in drawing up this plan already took into consideration, very much like you, Ms. CAO stated, and probably did consult. I quite like the location. I don't like the A option that's been crossed out, and I'm not a huge fan of tucking it in behind the shelter. I think that the people who are coming to the market are also going to enjoy just having the barn there. We do have the ability to expand the parking a little bit. If I start looking at the lot lines and where the parking of the other, in front of the other structures is, there is a little bit of space that we could capture there if we needed to enlarge our parking area. I quite like it. I would be in support of this.
Thank you, Councillor Potwell. I'd also note that from personal experience, the grounds get quite wet to the west of where the shelter is. Having helped someone during trunk and treat push their vehicle out. It was, and this guy dressed as Clark Kent got quite muddy. Anything further from members of council? That's exactly what it was. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Next report is Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan 2024 to 2029. Director Whiteman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
No, I do not, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council approves the Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan for 2024 to 2029 as presented for the municipality of Brighton. Questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. First of all, love that we have this. Really exciting to see this. I do have a question about, it does not seem that the energy use of our fleet was considered in this. Do we have any inventory or status of how much energy our fleet uses and how that might also be reduced over time?
And Director, I see that there's an Andrea Dwight on Zoom. I assume that that person is the one who took care of this report. Is that true?
Yes, that's true, Mr. Mayor.
Should we defer that question to?
Defer to Andrea.
Andrea?
Hi, thank you for allowing me to join your meeting.
Thank you.
With regards to the fleet, it was not part of the scope of this particular report because the report was driven primarily from Regulation 2523 of the Electricity Act, which asks for us to take a good look at buildings that are heated and cooled and other facilities, but the fleet is not specifically required. However, I think that is an important next step to take a look at. So it just was not part of the scope of this particular report.
Thank you, Ms. Dwight. Anything further? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. Appreciate that answer and this entire report. It's very clear. I did notice that we see that we've already reduced energy usage by 8%, but we're shooting for only another 5%. Is it that the lower hanging fruit have already been tackled, or are we hoping to aim low and over deliver?
Thank you. Yes, I think that, speaking a little bit for the team, that I think we'll aim low and over deliver is the hope. However, there are some changes that we have discussed over the next 5 years, including the changes to your water pollution control plant, which need to be factored in. There are significant changes which will improve the process. However, they may end up adding some electrical use to the current baseline. So we wanted to be cautious so we could meet the goals. However, the rest of the buildings, I think there are some significant savings. So I think that the overall plan is in good shape, and I should think that you're going to be able to exceed this goal. But you will have to take a very good look at factoring out the changes at the water pollution control plant, because the process will be quite different.
Thank you both. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. Just to clarify, because it wasn't, I got the impression that the large natural gas usage is primarily through the arena. Was it, because that is one of the larger emitters and natural gas is the largest share of emissions. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So upgrading our arena is a good step to reducing our emissions then.
Yes, that's correct. And I believe you have a fairly high use at your health services building and at your water plant.
Thank you both, Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair, thank you. I guess the other area that's been identified as a heavy consumer is street lighting. Did I get that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. One of the other areas that's mentioned is propane. Is that something that we should be focused on finding an alternative to, i.e. heat pumps?
Yes, I would suggest that you consider finding ways of eliminating propane over the next number of years if you can. And one of the key focus areas of this report is to really use the capital asset management program to really focus on energy efficiency when you are upgrading all of your equipment at end of life. And so as the systems that require a propane come to end of life, I think you need to be re-looking at brand new ways of heating your buildings, including heat pumps.
Follow up?
Yes, just to follow up. So would you rate elimination of propane ahead of natural gas?
I would, yes, I would. But I think that really you should look at it holistically as perhaps creating a guideline for a reduction of all fossil fuels if you're targeting greenhouse gas emission reductions.
Thank you. I also noticed that streetlights were a significant user here. The municipality invested fairly significantly in migrating to LEDs back in 2014, 2016, somewhere around there, with the anticipation that it would lower our costs in eventuality, but also, of course, lower our consumption. And yet, is it just simply the amount of streetlights we have that's driving that factor?
Yes, it is actually. If the report goes back to, I believe, 2019 data, but if you actually move back quite a bit further and go back to maybe 2015, your energy use was significantly higher. I believe you've been able to reduce the electricity use by at least 40%. Given the LED introduction on streetlights, which is significant. It just wouldn't be seen in this report because it didn't go back far enough. One area that you may want to consider looking at, some municipalities that have already converted to LED, start looking at the dark light standards, which is actually a dimming function for certain areas that don't require as much light. So that would be the next step in trying to save more kilowatt hours on your street lighting system.
Thank you. Is that recommendation in your report anywhere?
No, we've sort of we spoke about it offline.
Thank you. I'm just looking at staff. I'm getting some head nods, so we won't include anything in a motion quite yet. We'll see what staff bring forward. Anything further? Go ahead, Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. I see the Mr. Potensky's name mentioned quite a few times in the action plan at the end of this report. I just want to say, Danny, we've got a whole team of eco nerds in the Environmental Sustainability Committee who would love to be useful researchers for you if you need any support.
Thank you. Noted through staff. Appreciate that. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just reading through the report, I see that, and although I know we own the buildings, Codrington Community Center, along with the curling club, and I know both of those groups more or less pay a lot for their own energy, but they weren't considered in this. Would that be the reason for that? Because we don't pay those costs?
I don't know the answer to that. Anyone?
I can add that typically with the reports on this regulation, you need to only report on those facilities that you pay the bills for. So that may indeed have been the reason.
Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you. The energy inputs from the solar panels at Codrington Community Association were mentioned in this report. Does that offset our energy usage in this report?
Yes, it's a good question. This, just thinking, no, actually, to be quite honest, the energy that has been communicated for that building and in this report does not include the savings from the solar panels.
If we were to generate more clean energy within Brighton, would that be a way of reducing the carbon captured in the electricity? I know I assume you factored in natural gas generated electricity in the overall emissions from our energy usage. So if we were to generate more clean electricity here, that could reduce our emissions overall. Is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor of the motion? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Davis. Thank you, Director Whiteman.
Thank you.
Next report is tender PW 2024-09, supply and delivery of fuel. Mr. Blatansky, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Not at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council award tender PW 2024-09 for the procurement of the supply and delivery of unleaded gasoline and number 2 clear diesel fuel to 5 locations within the municipality of Brighton on a 4-year contract operating from June 30th, 2024 to June 29th, 2028. Questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair, thank you. I have a number of questions, if I may. First, to Mr. Blatinsky, can you give me some idea of the annual volume of gasoline and diesel covered by the arrangement in liters, but more specifically in dollars?
Mr. Blatansky.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Freitas. So yes, there's a couple of ways we can do this. We can go year by year, or we can go to pretty much what we have from 2023. So on an average, the total volume of fuel covered by this arrangement is the total. For example, in 2023, we used about 60,000 liters on average at a cost of $99,584.76. So that worked out to approximately $1.65 per liter.
Now, is that for gasoline and diesel combined or just one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Freitas, for diesel, it was about 65,000 liters at a cost of $89,607.60, which equal to approximately $1.37 per liter for diesel, clear diesel.
So if I understand the arithmetic, we're looking at somewhere in the area of $170,000 to $180,000 a year for gas and diesel combined. Would you agree with that number?
That sounds about right to me.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. If I read your report correctly, this is all of the fuel consumed by Public Works, Fire Department, Parks and Recs. Is that correct? So basically the entire municipal fleet.
Mr. Blatansky.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. It's the entire fleet.
Okay. Follow-up question is, in terms of the price quote that's indicated or attached, and it uses the rack price as the basis, is that rack price for branded or unbranded fuel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Freitas, that would be unbranded fuel.
Thank you. Can you identify what the discount of the rack price is that's being offered?
Mr. Blatansky.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Freitas. Yes, the way that they kind of worded it a little bit was a little bit confusing. So the bidder markup is actually the discount that the municipality would be receiving. So for example, for the company that we are suggesting, we are looking at a total savings of 7 cents per liter for gas and 9 cents per liter for clear diesel.
Thank you for that clarification. It took me a while to figure that out when it talked about bidder markup, and then seeing a negative sign there. Because my understanding is typically on bulk purchase agreements such as this, there's a discount off of the rack price. The rack price can change daily. With that understanding, how long is this discount good for? Is it firm for 1 year or all 4 years?
Mr. Blatansky?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Freitas, that would be for all 4 years.
Okay.
Councilor Freitas, is it okay if we go to another member of council?
Okay. If I can ask him.
Councilor Wielden.
Thank you. I have answered one of my previous questions from this evening. About 55,000 liters of diesel fuel is worth about 148,500 kilos of carbon emissions.
It's not a question, just a statement. Good information. Thank you, sir. Councilor Freitas, back to you.
Thank you. Great information. If we ever find a battery that could do the job. I had 2 questions, Mr. Blatansky, and I'll let you go. I also understand that Canoe offers a bulk fuel program. Had you considered them in your assessment?
Mr. Blatansky?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Freitas, yes, indeed, we did. We made several attempts to contact Canoe to talk about the process and what that would look like. It was funny though, on the website, it actually had 2 different companies with the same phone number. So it was a little bit confusing, but we did make several attempts.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I guess the other question I have is kind of a food for thought thing. You're proposing a 4-year purchase agreement, which is why I asked the first question, what is our annual expenditure? So it's about $200,000. So what you're asking us to approve is a $800,000 or $750,000 contract. So I needed to get my head around that number. And I'm sitting here of 2 minds as to the merits of a 4-year versus a 2-year. And let me share my rationale. And it's driven by the geopolitical aspects. If we look to our large neighbor of the South, who basically dictates things in the North American market in terms of energy supply, if the Republican challenger is elected, he's basically indicated that he will dismantle all of the green initiatives undertaken by the current administration, withdraw EV subsidies, and reinstate the dominance of the oil and gas industry, in which case we will be blessed to have a 4-year agreement because the American market will just take over. The alternative is if the incumbent is successful and he continues and enhances his green initiatives, you can see greater inroads being made and it having an impact on the current oil and gas industry to the point where they'll have to do something with their overcapacity, and the best way to move it is to cut the price, in which case we'll regret being in a 4-year deal. So I'm not sure which way to go. Do you have any thoughts?
Who are you asking? Mr. Blatansky.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Freitas. That is a good question. I think at this point, following suit for what's been happening in past years, I think right now with the uncertainty, we step forward with the 4 years. We could look at a 2-year, maybe next time around, but again, it's, for lack of a better word, a rolling of the dice. What do we do? We're taking other measures to cut back some of our consumption as the EV station is being built as we speak, as well as idling running times. What does that look like in the wintertime and in the summertime? As well as additives in our fuels, right? There's different additives that we can add to our fuels that prevent the gelling of diesel, as well as improving the octane in our gas.
Councillor Freitas.
Through the chair, thank you. So if I understand you correctly, you're in favor of 4-year. And I can't disagree with that. I mean, as I said, the geopolitics in this thing could go either way. The other thought that did occur to me is that we've identified that propane is an issue, but phasing it out may not be imminent or immediate. And it occurred to me, in light of the volume that we use, are we looking at measures to lower or improve our cost? And in doing some research on the Stinson folks that you're proposing, I understand that they're bulk propane deliverers as well. Is it worth considering tendering the propane business? Now, I realize we have a local propane source, but is it not appropriate to be perhaps looking at this on a competitive basis to see if we can perhaps lower the costs and generate the funding we need to seek alternative heat sourcing for those facilities?
Mr. Blazanski.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Freitas. I was doing a little bit digging, and from January 1, 2022 to present, for example, we'll take Codrington. Our consumption is about $20,000, $21,000. Sorry, I have my glasses on. I apologize. So per year approximately, but those might be a little bit strong for me. With all due respect. So as per year, we're looking at about 8,000. For Hilton Hall, today we're about $6,500 per year, approximately about 2,500 ballpark. And then when we're looking at 71 Chatham Road, today we're about $31,525. So approximately per year, about $12,000. So tendering it, if we bulked it all together, we could. There's something we could look at, but those are just some rough numbers. No.
Thank you both. Do you have a follow-up? No. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? That motion's carried. That brings us to changes to the Drinking Water Quality Management System Operational Plan of November 2023. Director Whiteman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Mr. Mayor, no, I do not.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council receive for information and endorse the cumulative changes to the Drinking Water Management System Operational Plan. Is there any discussion? Councillor Freitas.
Through the chair, thank you to Director Whiteman. And this may not be the place for it, this operational plan, but in reading it, I see a lot of references to documents and records and that sort of stuff. And it seems to me that the permits and licenses that are required, we need a permit to take water, which was supposed to have been renewed in October of 2024. And then we have a water license and accreditation that need to be done in 2025. Should this documentation not be part of the operational planning and record keeping and protocol and procedure that's in this? Or is there some other document that is more appropriate?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Freitas. My understanding from what I gathered from Mark earlier on is that This would be in the operational and maintenance manuals, which are updated on an annual basis. And so we've done it last, I think, in January. We are at the moment looking at the permit to take water application. It's been underway. So hopefully everything will work out before October 24, but it's underway. It's in process. With regard to the other ones, I think the permit to take water is every 10 years. Accreditation, I'm not sure. I think it's done every 5 years, and that is due in January of 25, and the water license in May of 2025.
Thank you. Anything further from members of council? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to the purchase of sale report. Manager Hallam, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you. Nothing at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council direct staff to work with legal representation to draft an agreement between the municipality of Brighton and the Brighton Lawn Bowling and Croquet Club and bring the agreement back to council for review and approval. Is there any discussion? Councillor Fredis.
Through the chair to Ms. Hallam, it says in here, I need better glasses. Yes, thank you very much. Now I can't get the part of the page. Oh, yes, here it is. We acquire the property for a nominal fee. Now, we'd had a discussion about this before on the nominal fee, and we seem to have a huge disagreement. I thought it should be $1 and someone else thought it should be $10. Can you tell me which number that nominal fee is that you might be offering?
Manager Hallam.
That hasn't been confirmed at this time.
I'll assume that comes back in your report to council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely.
Thank you for that. Is there any further discussion for members of council? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is the Lions Club 5-year agreement. Manager Hallam, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, nothing at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council approve a new 5-year agreement with the Lions Club of Brighton for the use of the Owen Gibb Community Centre located at 75 Elizabeth Street, Brighton, Ontario. Is there any discussion? Councillor Butwell.
Thank you, and through you to Director Hallam or Manager Hallam. Thank you. Under analysis comments at the bottom, ABC, we have use of the hall for regular Monday meetings. Are those daytime meetings?
Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. Those are evening meetings.
So I take it then that they are using the hall for 2 out of 5 weekday evenings? This item B is use of the hall for 1 evening per week for bingo fundraisers. So
Yes, yes,
okay.
that's correct.
The reason I'm asking is because I have been in contact with somebody who's going to be a new Spark and Embers leader for the Girl Guides, and they've lost the use of Hilton Hall. And I believe they will be coming forward looking for space. And it's not just going to be one troop, it's going to be several groups. So if we have 2 out of 5 evenings already spoken for, does that leave us enough space? Are there other groups that are using it in the evenings already?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, there's multiple groups that use regularly, sometimes every night of the week, or twice a month or 3 times a month. So it would be tough to find a consecutive night on a weekly basis and throughout the summer as well.
Councillor Butwell.
Yes, thank you. So it's this community center, this community space is already, if we agree with this agreement, this 5-year agreement, we're locking it up for 5 evenings a week during, let's say, the school year when the troops run?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this group, the Lions Club uses an average of 7 times a month. Or sorry. Or twice a week for their bingo and their weekly meetings.
And that's currently true.
Yes, that's been happening for the last several years.
Keeping in mind, of course, that the community hall that we're talking about is erected on the place where the Lions Club used to be. So there was yet another handshake agreement that they would have use for this space, just like the scouting movement had agreement that we would find use in the basement of this place because this is where the Scotty Broughton Youth Center was. Now our basement isn't exactly usable for guiding and scouting, but I would suggest it is beholden. It is beholden to us to find space for guides and scouts. So when that happens, I think council would be wise to work out a way to make some space somewhere available to them somehow.
All right, I will take that as you've offered it.
Keeping in mind that I don't know how.
Right, so.
But I think we should try to find a way forward for this.
Mhm.
I mean, we do owe a bit to the Lions. They didn't kick up a fuss when we tore down their Lions Club hall to put up that community center. Now the Lions Club hall was owned by the municipality. It was our building. So they never once paid a property tax dollar on it. However, you know, that was their clubhouse and that's how they raised their money by renting it out. So when we took it down and put up the community center, there was that, you know, agreement that because you don't have a space to raise money in, we would make sure you had space for your meetings. Same with the scouting movement back in the
Mhm.
day when the Scotty Broughton Youth Center came down. So lots of
Yeah.
things in the air at the moment.
I know the scouting use and the guys used to be downstairs, lost that space, were relocated. They've now lost that space and they seem to be homeless at the moment. So there's a shortage of space and perhaps we all need to learn to share. I will leave it at that.
Well, and of course, the question comes, what happens, should council need the community center on a Monday for a council meeting, which we do 2, 3, 4 times a year. I think that the Lions Club is amenable to that. They understand that that space is needed for a public meeting, so they don't meet that evening. Is that correct, Manager Hallam?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
As will happen on July 15th when we meet at the community center. Go ahead, Councillor Belwell.
Just because is there something in the contract that says, should the municipality require that space for an alternative use on one of the nights previously allocated to the Lions, that our use shall supersede, take precedence over the Lions usage?
I think I did see that in there, Manager Hallam.
I don't recall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. There is in the agreement, just as our other allocations, that municipal would always get first choice. So whether it's an emergency for an evacuation or for a council meeting, municipal would trump any other further agreement.
Anything further from members of council? Councillor Rowley?
I just want to follow up a little bit on what Councillor Butwell said regarding guiding and that they are no longer able to use the Hilton Hall. Is that permanent or is that just a temporary situation based on some of the comments that Director Whiteman made earlier?
So I'll not part of this report, but I'll allow the question.
Okay, thank
Who
you.
wants to tackle it? Mr. Blatansky.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, the council rally. So where we're at right now, that septic tank has to be replaced. For everyone's information, the septic tank is quite old. There's an excessive amount of clay in that area, which is holding a lot of water. Also to add, there's a very large, lovely tree that's there. the roots have grown completely through the septic tank and is no longer usable. So we've received 3 quotes from 3 different vendors. We're in the process right now to award one of those to the vendor. In consultation with Director Whiteman, we're going to be moving forward as soon as possible, as well as staff will be completing some ditching in-house to relieve some of that groundwater. We have to do that. And that was one of the main issues why that tank has failed. So at this point, I'm doing my best to move it as quickly and as fast as possible. I do realize how important this is to the Girl Guides. I've had many discussions with Amanda. So we're on it. And as soon as I have an update, I'll be happy to bring it forward.
So there is a solution on its way. It's just a matter of time. Is that what council is to understand?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Anything further on the motion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And the next report is the wastewater treatment facility upgrades. CAO, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, Mr. Mayor, I do not.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council schedule a special council meeting to be held on Tuesday, July 16th, 2024 at 3:30 p.m. to receive the information requested on June 3rd, 2024 regarding the wastewater treatment facility upgrades. Is there any discussion? Councillor Freitas.
Did you say July 16th at 3:30?
I did.
Because this says 10 a.m.
I am aware of that. However, the mover and the seconder have scratched out 10 a.m. and have written in 3:30 p.m. and thus I read the motion as it is presented to me. It's my understanding that at least one member of council cannot make a 10 a.m. meeting. It's also my understanding that there's an Applefest committee meeting that happens at 5:30. That, given how close we are to Applefest at that time, we can't be messing around with Applefest. So the thought is if we meet at 3:30, it gives us a full 2 hours, assuming our technology works at the beginning of the meeting, to to have this discussion. Councillor Rowley.
Would staff expect that we could go through this in 2 hours? I myself thinks it's going to take more than 2 hours.
Councillor Wheeldon.
Are we really expecting to go through it one report and message at a time? I thought we were going to be receiving a report and doing our homework.
I would anticipate that would be true. Councillor Rowley.
I'll do my homework, but I don't want to be limited to 2 hours from 3:30 to 5:30 and Applefest. Regardless, this is a very important issue that we're dealing with. However, Applefest is close and we've already been moving our meetings in order to accommodate council that week. So is your compromise 1 o'clock?
Councillor Wright is the mover.
It's extraordinarily difficult for me to get away. I have a staff member, my only staff member that's on vacation. That's why I offered up the 3:30. We can put it to 1 o'clock, and if I'm a bit late to the table, that may have to happen. My husband will take over the store and he'll be shaking in his boots as he does so. So hopefully he will be amenable to that process.
Would 2:30 work? Would it
Yes,
be better for you?
that would be better, yes.
Do you think we could get this done in 3 hours? You don't.
Serious. If it takes us 3 hours, my God.
Well, that is a possibility. So if we start at 2:30 and we get to 5:30 and we're still not finished the meeting, we can easily recess the meeting and reschedule for another time. In fact, what I'll do in advance of the meeting is sit down with staff and find a time to reconvene the meeting after the recess if we need it. Is that fair, Madam Clerk? CAO?
Could we come back to the meeting after the Applefest meeting if that's necessary?
Applefest would go till about 7. Yeah, we could reconvene when the Applefest committee is done. I don't have a problem with that if that works for staff.
Do we have anybody from outside agencies attending?
CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would assume that the representatives from Jail Richards will be available for question, probably not attending in person.
So they would need to be aware that there may be a 1.5 hour gap between a recess, and as long as they're aware of that and are able to come to the later time, that's fine. Councillor Butwell?
Will there be representatives from Anderson and Graham?
CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this time, we're not including the alternative representatives as Jail Richards is the consultant with whom council has the contract with and is preparing the documentation. So at this point, we would have them available to speak to the documents that they're providing as a whole. So I would leave it to them to answer questions of council.
Anything further from members of council? Councillor Fredis?
To the chair, so I guess in light of that, it's fairly clear that we will need a second meeting. Because I think a number of us feel that we would like to hear the GSS RV Anderson presentation so that we understand what it entailed, so that we can better appreciate how we got from 8 million to 40 million.
I suspect that the report that you're going to get will tell you exactly how we got from the 8 million to the 30 million. I don't know that GSS needs to chime in on that. All their information will be available in the report. But we can have a second meeting. So why don't we schedule it 2:30 to 5:30? When we get to 5:25, if we're not already adjourned, we'll have a discussion about setting another special council meeting. That won't be 7 o'clock that evening. We'll push it to the next week or whenever we can. Because if we haven't settled on whatever we need to settle on by then, we're going to need another few hours. And I don't think 7 o'clock that evening is a good time to do another few hours. Fair enough? We'll figure it out. We'll figure out when that can be, and we'll do it well in advance of sitting down. So 2:30, okay? As the mover, seconder, 2:30? Any further discussion? Those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. Next report is the ongoing report on capital projects, CAO. We've read your chart. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, Mr. Mayor, I do not.
Thank you. The motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The council received the ongoing report on capital projects update for information. Questions or comments from members of council? All in favor? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. We have no notices of motion or motions. We have nothing under unfinished business, which brings us to bylaws. First bylaw is 039/2024, with a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The council approves the changes to Schedule A and Schedule B of the remuneration rates for members of council bylaw. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Oh,
Recorded vote, please.
thank you. Madam Clerk, a recorded vote has been requested by Councillor Rowley.
Councillor Emily Rowley. Councillor Jeff.
Yes.
Councillor Bobby Wright.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ron Anderson.
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Ann Butwell. You think that's what it is? Okay. Councillor Ann
Yes.
Butwell. Councillor Byron Paredes,
Yes.
and that's carried.
I'd like to vote.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Brian and Ostrander. Would you like
Yes.
to vote?
I'm more than just a solutions guy, you know.
Okay.
The next bylaw is the rescinding of bylaw, the conduct pre-consultation meetings. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to rescind bylaw 067/2021 pre-consultation meetings bylaw be rescinded as per Bill 185 changes to pre-consultation. Is there any discussion? Councillor Fredis.
To the chair, I think I understand this. Did I not also understand that we're expecting from planning a revision that would still enable us to offer this sort of thing?
Yes, I think we saw in a report last week that there was a workaround in progress that would help with pre-consultation type meetings still. Director Walsh, any comment?
Through the Mayor Council, the report last week or last council session also contained a recommendation that gave direction to staff to continue with the requirements of a public open house as part of a complete application. So we have that direction through council as per that previous report. This bylaw rescinds the specific bylaw that dealt with mandatory pre-consultation and also dealt with some complete application issues, but by virtue of council's direction, we can continue on with that practice. And my understanding through different legal advice in the past that that does have standing before any tribunal or court, being council's direction. So we will continue before we bring back something further through revised official plan amendment that will bring in a public consultation policy and a complete application policy as well through that amendment. And that's going to be something that council will be seeing in the fall.
Thank you both. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to reports, minutes of advisory committees of council and review teams. The first is the only is Economic Development Advisory Committee. Deputy Mayor Anderson and Councillor Fredis, you're members of that committee. Do you have anything to highlight for us? Motion is moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that council receive the Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2024. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next is reports and minutes of statutory committees, boards, and external agencies. The only item here is the Lower Trent Conservation Authority Board meeting minutes. Councillors Wright and Wheeldon, you are representatives on that board. Do you have anything to highlight for us? I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council receive the Lower Trent Conservation Authority Board meeting minutes, May 9th, 2024, as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to correspondence, direction items, endorsements, communications, and petitions. First comes from Highland Shores Children's Aid. It's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Fredis, that council support Highland Shores Children's Aid request to proclaim October 25th, 2024 as Dress Purple Day. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next is correspondence from Kevin Shea. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. The council received the correspondence from Kevin Shea regarding an offer for the municipality to purchase the British phone booth. Is there any discussion? Councillor Butwell?
Thank you. Cool idea, $7,500. I don't think we really need a phone booth. A little excessive, cute idea, perhaps in more flush times.
So agreed, and it does get a lot of uptake. I know that in the community, but I wonder if we could refer this to staff for some back and forth.
It seems like an interesting use of staff time. It's not a Canadian phone booth. It was a collectible, and Mr. Shea has popped it on his front lawn. It's kind of a cute idea. I really don't see the value for the municipality in us taking this on.
Very well. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Wright.
I just happened to look up some ideas to use the telephone booth for if we were to proceed with it. And I saw that some people use them to house defibrillators. Some people use them as a macro library. Obviously, the selfie photo op for Brighton. And it could also make an interesting crossing guard booth to protect from weather. So it would be a neat addition on the corner at the bottom of Main and Young Prince Edward.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, in Britain, they're now used for Wi-Fi. It's where you go catch your Wi-Fi if you need to catch an Uber and you don't have cell service. Councillor Fredis.
I think I agree with Councillor Butwell. It's an interesting concept. But I don't think we should be spending taxpayer dollars on it. And I don't think we should be burdening staff time trying to find a use for this. It's British and not Canadian. Had it been a Canadian phone booth, I might have had different thoughts, but I just don't see the merit.
If it was a Canadian phone booth, I'd agree with you 100%. Those things were ugly. So we're just going to accept it, receive the correspondence and move on. We're not going to forward this to staff. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. Brings us to FYI correspondence, update from the Northumberland Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness, May 16th. Councillor Wheeldon, any update for us?
I just want to take a short presentation on what the Workforce Housing Corporation is. County AcDev Department has started up a Workforce Housing Corporation, the goal of which is to work with developers or builders to purchase or build units according to a sort of maximum price that they've set, and the builder agrees to work with them toward that maximum price. And then the County Workforce Housing Corporation would own that, but would allow someone who works within Northumberland County and has a maximum household income of $120,000 to be on title with them with $2,000 down to effectively rent to own this property, always being co-owner with the Workforce Housing Corporation and selling their interest in that title when they move on. So that it allows someone who works in the community but can't afford to live here to actually build some equity rather than being stuck in a rental situation. I think it's a great model. Their approach as an AcDev department is to work with existing developers in the community. And so they're not necessarily interested in alternative housing models, such as things like co-ops or tiny homes or things like that. They're basically talking to somebody who's already building a row of townhouses and saying, we'll take half of these if you can build them to our price. I think that's an interesting model. It's a good model for getting a few units. Really glad that they're working on that. Does not actually alleviate the massive demand for affordable housing. But it's interesting to see programs shifting towards not just the most needy or people who are on OW and ODSP, but actually shifting to people who might have a six-figure household income but still can't actually afford to live in Northumberland County.
Or nearly anywhere else. I have a motion moved by Councillor Fredis, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council receive the update from Northumberland Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness, May 16th, 2024. Questions or comments from members of Council? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to question period. Wayne? Thank you. You ever feel like we're actually in Stars Hollow? I often feel like that. We have no in-camera session this evening. Brings us to our confirmatory bylaws, moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council gives the bylaws for second and third reading. Finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council meeting held on June 24th, 2024. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that the June 24th, 2024 council meeting adjourn at 8:45 p.m. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? And being none opposed, that motion's carried. Thank you all very